And now, Elizabeth, President Biden is on his way back to the White House. He has announced that he is going to speak to the nation tomorrow night. But do you think we could maybe see him or hear from him? Because as we're seeing a little action on the tarmac here, we were thinking that maybe possibly he might talk with reporters. We might hear from him. I know that we will be paying very close attention to what he looks like, how he's walking, how he's responding, because the last time we saw him coming off Air Force One, it didn't look good. And then he was isolated dealing with COVID. So I think we're not only eager to hear what he has to say, but also how he looks when we see him for the very first time. Let me start there, and then I do want to ask you about him meeting with Netanyahu. Also, he's not just giving a speech, but he's going to meet with Netanyahu, who's going to be here in D.C. And now we're learning Trump is also going to meet with Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago. All right, let's back up. I'm trying to even see if the president is in this car.
It looks like the motorcade there has pulled up, Kira. We've been waiting for him to depart Delaware. It's a little bit behind schedule. But as you say, this would be the first time that we would see the president in public since he has been there isolating from COVID. And I will say that we just in the last hour have gotten a note from his physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, saying that the president has now tested negative. There you can see the president, Kira, walking out of putting a mask.
We see him now for the first time since isolating there in Rehoboth. He's got a mask in his hand. All right, let's listen for a moment. They are shouting questions. I don't know if we can hear or not. Okay, it looked like, Elizabeth, that possibly some folks there in the pool tried to... You've been in those... We've all been in those situations. Oh, wait, here we go. Let's listen. Trump, Mr. President. My guess is he probably didn't even hear it because it gets really loud when you're going up there. But here it is. That's that first image as he slowly works his way up the steps and gets onto Air Force One there, getting ready to leave Delaware to head back here to D.C. for that big speech tomorrow night. Okay, he didn't talk to reporters, but we saw him moving slowly. It'll be interesting to see how he does tomorrow night, Elizabeth.
Well, and Kira, what a moment. I mean, how much has changed since we saw the president board Air Force One just under a week ago. He first tested positive for COVID last Wednesday. We have not seen him since then. As you say, this is the first time we're seeing those images of President Biden since he's been isolating from COVID. We did just get this note from his physician. He's now negative and his symptoms have resolved, his doctor says. But, you know, we have not seen the president since he dropped that letter Sunday, Kira, on social media that completely altered the state of the 2024 race for the White House. We've seen some statements from him on X. We know that yesterday he called into campaign headquarters, what had been up until then his campaign headquarters, and it quickly overnight changed into Harris headquarters. He gave his blessing to the vice president. He said, I'm watching you, I'm here for you. But undeniably, this is a big moment for the president tomorrow night with this primetime address here in the Oval Office. What the president says he wants to touch on, Kira, is what lies ahead and how he will finish the job. So I think you can expect the president to continue to say his time here in the White House is not up yet. He still wants to try to push forward any parts of his agenda that he can, while also getting out on the campaign trail and, as he says, fully throwing his support behind his vice president, who is now the presumptive Democratic nominee.
And Jay, I do have a question for you, but Elizabeth, you know, on that note, you know, there was a lot of pressure on President Biden to totally step down and allow Kamala Harris to step in as acting president. There was chatter for a quick, hot, 12 hours about that, if not more. It looks like that is not going to be the case, right? But anything could happen between now and January if indeed, things go the way of the Democratic Party.
Certainly there had been chatter, but something that the White House, Kira, was so quick to shut down. And in fact, we did just hear from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today in an interview. She said that's ridiculous to assume that he wouldn't try to finish out his term. And the president, in writing his letter and making that decision that he said he would be stepping down from the race, did make very clear that he fully intended, Kira, to keep staying here in the White House to try to finish the job. And something that we've heard from other Democratic leaders, too, say that they want to be behind the president in these final few months, see, you know, obviously the legislative agenda any few months before an election. Not a lot generally happens, but no sign or really no indication, Kira, that the president isn't going to continue fulfilling that role.